Shine your eyes, use your head on top Property Matter. The show will be say we put am for ground so that people could get information on top how to become their own landlord. So I say good morning to everybody wey dey watch us today. I dey say good morning to every property owner. I dey say good morning to every tenant too wey be say him be aspiring landlord. I dey say good morning to every realtor. I dey say good morning to every, because one way or the other all of us dey involved as far as property matter dey concerned. You can either be a landlord or be tenant. They sell property, they look for the one to buy. So this morning we go to continue from where we stop, and that now onto the ways to own properties, the ways where we take own property. Engineer Debo last week done pieces a lot. You can't give us the percentage of who gets what, when, and how they take get them. And then Nadia will begin this morning. So make I yield the floor to our experts. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Chief. Our viewers, good morning. How are you? Have you been? I believe you've been enjoying the episode, and today we hope that we'll wrap up on the options available for you to own a property, own a home, okay? So we've talked about 4 options before now. So we started with talk about the pay in full, you know, the one you pay for in full, by buying or by incremental building. You buy land, you construct incrementally over some time. We moved on to, we've talked about inheritance, then we moved on to off-plan, then we've talked about mortgage in that order. Now, the next one, which is the 5th one that we are talking about, is that there is the opportunity to buy a house or to own a property via mortgage, okay, through mortgage financing. What is mortgage financing? Basically, and that constitutes about 6.9% of that research that we have been using as our base for our discussion, okay? So what is mortgage? Basically, mortgage is when you get a loan to buy a built house, okay? And then you start staying in the house. The house is the collateral for the loan. And you start paying back the loan gradually till you pay up. That's a mortgage. Meaning that instead of paying rent to a landlord, that is, rent is considered what we call a wasting asset. Meaning once you pay it and you spend that period, it don't go. But when you pay loan back, say you buy a house with mortgage, they pay loan back. As the house they appreciate, your what we call equity in the house, they grow be that. So for example, take one funny example, you know, there is a property that I know sold for like about 60 million around 2016. Okay, 2015, 2016, sold for 60 million. That's a property today now is worth about 180 million.
Just 7 years.
Yes,
8 years.
7 years down the line. 7 years down the line. It's worth about 180 million. That's like 3 times, right? The initial price. Now, if somebody took loan to pay for that 60 million property, he took mortgage. Let's say out of 60 million, maybe he paid 10 million down. He took mortgage of 50 million. And they say he go pay the 50 million back in 5 years. The 50 million plus the interest wey dey on top of the 50 million, he go pay back in 5 years. Abi? As in they pay, he go don't pay like, he go don't finish
Payment of
the
course.
payment now, Abi? But you see, the property he now owns is worth 180. If, as he stays longer, he has the property will still continue to appreciate. But let's assume that it is 5-year rent. He borrowed money to finance. You understand? He borrowed money to finance 5-year rent. As the 5 years don't pass, they go don't carry him loan come up for the house. Or he go get to pay another money. He don't get anything. The money where he pay for the rent go don't go. You understand? So that's why it is a way that people should look at. But I understand the challenge in our environment. For example, if we say somebody take loan of 50 million naira, mortgage of 50 million, in our own context in Nigeria, if the loan interest be like 25%, let's just put it that way, it means that just straight line calculation, which is not because it's compound interest ordinarily, but straight line calculation, it means that in that 5 years, when you suppose pay back, you understand, he go pay 125% as interest on the 50 million. So you go pay the 50 million, then you go pay 125% of 50 million as interest. 125% of 50 million will be like about how much? 72,500. So altogether, 72,500 per 50, you'll be paying like about 22,500, right? You'll be paying about, yes, it will be paying about 122,500. That's what the person will pay in 5 years. But you can even imagine that, yes, you will pay that.
Gain still dey.
But because property have appreciated lately, you know, the property in short of 7 years is now worth 180. So
with that, it still gets.
At least he don't pay. He pay 122, but as the time go, as he hold on to the property, they go.
Still they appreciate.
They appreciate. So even in a very high interest rate, if you can afford it, it's still good. Not to now talk of when, because a lot of people cannot afford that mortgage rate that still happens in our country right now. But when mortgage falls below what it should be, under 10%, single digits, you understand? The type of mortgage that you get from Federal Mortgage Bank, for example. When it falls below on 10%, and they're asking you to pay in 10 years even, in 10 years, you go just reach, let's say it's 10%. That is the mortgage rate. In 10 years, straight line calculation, that is when it will reach 100%. You understand? You can imagine this property where we talk about now. We don't be times 3. If you reach 10 years, how much you go what? Do you get? So that's why if you don't have money, rather than mortgage helps you, I think mortgage helps you to be able to be inside the house and save rent.
And not waste money for rent.
Yes, not waste money for rent. While you are paying towards your ownership of the house, your final ownership. You don't already own them. You are paying to completely own it. You are paying the mortgage off completely. And the security
which
is
the
house.
Same thing that is supposed to be.
You are not. And when it happens like that, the way, if we are able to work around our mortgage such that mortgage becomes more affordable and available to people in this country, the way it will boost our economy, boost security, boost everything in the country, will be shocked.
Engineer Debo still there on mortgage. You don't explain the meaning of mortgage to us. So that one means of saving what should be a wasted rent. Say the one way person go the waste rent. I say because once you pay the rent, once your money bond finish, nothing between you and landlord again than to park your car. But if to send a mortgage, you say this one, as you service the debts, kere, they become the owner of the house, small be that. Okay, over to you, sir.
Yeah, so that is why I advise people to explore the option of mortgage, because it will help them to be able to easily acquire property if they qualify. Now, you must know this. What determines what you are able to qualify for in terms of the amount you are able to loan as mortgage is 1/3. It has to be 1/3 of your pay must be able to pay what is expected monthly on that mortgage. If you require more than 1/3, about 33.3% of your pay to service that mortgage, it will be difficult for you to be able to get it or qualify for the mortgage. It's difficult. So that's why a lot of people with high interest rate mortgage may not be able to afford it. And with low paying job and high property prices, people will not be able to afford it, because it will be way more, than what they are expected. And then when the tenure is also short, we are doing 5 years, 10 years. That's what is common in Nigeria. Meanwhile, a typical mortgage in a more stable economy is 20, 30 years.
Wow.
Yes, it's 20, 30 years. So people take mortgage by the time they are like 30 and they are paying off or finishing their payment only by the time they are 60 or 70, thereabout, except they pay up in time, which is also very possible. So, it's something that you want to look at to get into property acquisition as much as possible.
Most of these our Latif Jakande estates and LSDPC, we can classify them as mortgage.
Well, so yes, the government was able to sell to a number of civil servants through bringing on mortgage on board. And those were what you could call mortgage those days, because you know it was ballot first. Then when you win, you will now. It's not everybody that it was ballot. I remember that of Jack Conde particular, and I think even Festac 77 was through ballot system first. You know, so you do ballots when you win in the ballot, then they will now allocate to you. Then they will give you mortgage on it, and then you'll be paying. A number of people for Festac paid up some years ago, only some years ago, just some maybe 10 or 15 years ago. A number of people in Jack Conde are just paying up in some 5 years or so ago. You understand? So some of them were paying how much? I don't let me quote any figure now, but I mean, if you hear those amounts they are paying,
meager amount, we go make person
very ridiculous amount, and that's what mortgage is. In fact, in some economy that are really very stable, your mortgage repayment is higher than what you will be paying as rent if you were to rent that property. Your mortgage, your rent, is higher than what you will have been paying as mortgage if you were. I mean, than what you pay as mortgage. If you were to rent that property, your rent will be higher. So why will you not take mortgage and buy that property? And that's where the concept of positive cash flow investment in real estate comes in. So people then take mortgages to buy properties, and they buy a number of it and rent them out. And it is the rent after servicing and all of that that they use to pay the mortgage. So they can have multiple properties, you know, that they have mortgages on. Once they are tenanted and the rent is coming in, they use that to pay. And over time, they can pay up the mortgage, or once the property appreciates a bit, they sell that off with the mortgage, make a little spread on the money, move on to another thing. And in developed economies, that is what some people specialize in. It has its own rules and regulations, what you must watch out for and all to be safe and not during up and down economy. But then it is very, very available. So mortgage is a very good option. As we move closer and closer to single digits in this country, I know that the Bankers Association are trying. The Mortgage Bank Association of Nigeria, I know that they are trying. They were instrumental to enabling the government to do a PPP arrangement and a private-public sector partnership arrangement to come up with what they call NMRC, Nigeria Mortgage Refinance Company, which aims to reduce the interest rate and also helps liquidity in that industry, because the industry is not so liquid, as it were. But NMRC is there now to help liquidity. At least they are playing their own role. Okay. Then we have, they also started what they call Bankers Warehouse, bank warehouse, where it's also like a mortgage securitization kind of arrangement, where liquidity is also enhanced in that industry. And the Federal Mortgage Bank is still there, giving out NHF mortgage. Recently, they announced that the cap has been reviewed to an upwards of 50 million. So meaning that from 15 before, that used to be the cap. Before, when they first started, it was, I think, 5. Okay, from 5, it moved to 15. From 15 now to 50. So that means more and more people can come in. You can buy more and more tangible properties once you qualify to be able to do that. So, I mean, these are possible options that people can explore. There are ways. We've talked about NHF before. You want to watch that video, go to WAP TV and watch the video talking about how you can position yourself to better benefit from NHF and stuff like that. Because a lot of people complain that I contribute, you know, but I don't know how I'm going to benefit and all of that. So that is mortgage. The last one, and mortgage, like we said, is 6.9%. The last one is government schemes. You know, government schemes. It's funny that it is the last one, and it's 4.9%. You know, it's funny that it's the last one, but we just still mentioned some government schemes when we were talking about mortgage. Jack Conde schemes, Shagari Housing Estates, Gowon Estates. Mostly all the presidents have had their own project one way or the other. All the state governors in your various states, if you look at them, they've had their own housing project or the other. But you see, all of this just contribute 4.9% of how people get into home ownership. So the sense in that, the wisdom in that, like I said, is that government, yes, may want to get involved in actual creation of homes, production of homes. But most importantly, they should really focus on creating an enabling environment. Because with an enabling environment, other people through the other means can create more homes for people. So yes, I think we have a caller.
Yeah, we have an engineer. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, you have a question for the engineer here?
Yes, I actually have a question for him.
Okay, go on, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, like we that are civil servants, like state civil servants, I don't know if maybe they have anything for us, because most of us actually collect loan from bank, you collect loan, you go and maybe pay house rent. So if this mortgage scheme was available, it should be free from all these things. It's not okay. And if the property at the end of the day will become their own, I think you get something, there's nothing like that. We've got to this bank. When they come to us back, there is also first mortgage. So I don't know if it is true. And if it is not true, how do we go about it? I want to benefit from the system. I'm an engineer.
Okay. Thank you very much. I struggle to hear him because of network.
I think he's asking people that are civil servants.
How do they, yeah. But you see, civil servants are actually the most opportune though. If you're a federal civil servant, for example, I think the federal government has a housing finance program for civil servants, separate. Then there is also the Federal Mortgage Bank, which they deduct your contribution, okay, for NHF, and you can benefit from NHF. Now, what happens a lot of times is that people don't know how to go about these things. And with NHF, I've said it over and over, and even with the federal mortgage, federal government civil servants loan, what you need to do, right, is to look for a mortgage bank and a developer that are working hand in hand with federal mortgage bank.
Okay.
You understand? Once you can get where these three people are working hand in hand and on a project that you will be interested in, meaning a developer is developing a project and he has a mortgage bank that is working with him to help process federal mortgage loan for the subscribers, and you are interested in the project of that developer, you are good. That's what you should look out for. A lot of people will go and look for property somewhere. They will now say, I want to use a federal mortgage loan to finance it. That doesn't work like that. Because the process it takes, the time it takes to process those things, whoever, an independent seller of a property will have sold his property to somebody else. Do you understand?
Okay.
But if a developer is doing a project and has committed to the federal mortgage thing through a mortgage bank that is working with him, they are looking for you that has been contributing and that is interested in that project to come in and subscribe. You'll be shocked that you don't even need to put down any money. Federal Mortgage Bank has a number of programs. They have what they call rent to own. Rent to own, for example, you won't even need to put down any money. You move into the house and you'll be paying something equivalent to rent. And the rent, the payment you are making is towards ownership, not just
reading
rent.
for ownership.
Yeah, so please explore it. A lot of times, people cannot afford what they want, and they don't want what they can afford. That is where the problem starts. If you can settle that quagmire, not affording what you want, and not being able to, not liking,
yes.
They don't like what they can afford.
Not overshooting.
They don't like what they can afford, and they can't afford what they like. You understand? If you can overcome that, your problem is half solved.
We see the on government schemes, sir.
Just to wrap up government schemes. So the appeal is that government, if they want to do housing directly, they can, but they should concentrate more on creating the enabling environment. They can see that there are a lot of other ways by which people own properties that are gaining more ground. Government can only do just a little. You understand? Yeah. So that's what I would encourage. But a lot of times also, they should build for the markets. More government, the impacts government schemes make is to the level that especially the low middle income people are able to benefit from those projects. And that's why we can talk about Jakonde till tomorrow. We can talk about a number of other government, Mobolaji Johnson's rule area. You know, we can talk about a number because they built for the masses at the time. So they should target the masses and it will be more impactful.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief Olododo. Nice to be my name, and from Engineer Debo, two of us will say bye.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Shine your eye, use your